Don't you dare come back, Baldy. As I returned home exhausted from work, merciless words and my daughter's school bag were hurled at me. You're not needed. You're not a father. Don't come back home. When you come back, the house feels darker. And don't you dare show up at the parent-teacher day. It would be so embarrassing if people found out you're my dad. My daughter Cindy was in the living room hurling these words at me as I stood in the hallway by the entrance. From the living room where she was, I could see the kitchen where my wife Susan was. Cindy could see what expression Susan was making. I couldn't. Susan said nothing to the abusive words from our daughter. She just silently continued with whatever she was doing in the kitchen. I held back, saying anything now would only add fuel to the fire. Can't you just not come back? You're useless, not even making enough money. It was Susan who first hurled such abuse. Having seen that, Cindy started to do the same to me. She wears her uniform skirt so short it almost reveals her underwear and dyes her long hair to a blondish brown. She wears large contact lenses to make her eyes appear bigger, false eyelashes, and makeup that glitter in a blind eye. The clothes Cindy leaves lying around are too flashy for a student, resembling those of a nightclub worker. She hardly attends school and seems to roam the downtown areas instead. I've warned her numerous times, not minding the arguments it causes, but Susan has never once reprimanded her. I recently realized that Susan has been buying Cindy makeup and flashy clothes just because she asked for them. She has been spoiling Cindy, confusing being a kind mother with being an ineffective parent. How did it come to this? My dream was to have a family filled with smiles, a treasure for a lifetime. I didn't expect a baseball team-sized family, but I dreamt of playing catch in the yard with a son and buying a wedding gown for a daughter to keep as a bridal gift. I bought a house with a yard for this dream family and gritted my teeth at work every day to pay the mortgage. I was all about baseball in my school days and never really studied. Surviving in the world of an office worker, chasing numbers every day, was not going to be easy without extraordinary effort. I had never even used a computer before, so I gave up my weekends, and swallowing my pride, attended a computer class for beginners. Most of my allowance went to drinks with my boss. It was never enjoyable, just listening to sermons over drinks, all to get on the boss's good side, climb the corporate ladder, survive in the company, protect my family, and realize my dreams. It's not something I can proudly boast about, but I was skilled at ingratiating myself with seniors during gatherings and securing their help to navigate the corporate environment more easily. This was because I had become accustomed to gouging the moods of my seniors back in my baseball club days during school. My allowance used to be $500 a month, but it was cut down for trivial reasons, and now it's just $30. The reasons for my allowance being cut weren't significant. It was for things like breaking a dish while washing or forgetting to buy the milk I was asked to get on my way home. Unable to engage in internal sales to win over my boss, I had to compete on merit with colleagues who had studied properly in college. But I couldn't give up. It was all to afford a spacious house with a yard, to spare Susan the hardships I went through, and to let her focus on raising our children. Upon graduating from college, I joined a company that sells and maintains office computers, telephones, fax machines, and internet connections. Our company has branches nationwide. I was assigned to a regional city in the New York area. I drove around unfamiliar lands in a company car from morning till night. Susan, who was new layout at the time, followed me as the team assistant of the baseball team. Susan was quite popular. She wasn't a stunning beauty, but her cheerful and graceful demeanor often got her compared to famous TV anchors or magazine models. She was my pride and joy as a girlfriend and then as my wife. Back then, I was truly happy. But what about now? It feels like I'm trapped in a bad dream. Don't ever come back, Ubaldi. Who could have imagined that such harsh words would come from Susan, who was so adorable 20 years ago? Now our daughter Cindy is following in Susan's footsteps, hurling abuse and vitriol my way. They team up to splurge on clothes and bags, which is just unbearable. Susan and Cindy have become a codependent mother-daughter duo, spoiling each other rotten. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I'm only 35 years old, yet I am indeed 35. My hairline has receded, my forehead widened, my hair has lost its thickness, and wrinkles have appeared on my face. My belly has started to sag. The body I had and honed through sports is now a thing of the past. With age, I've keenly felt the decline of my physical capabilities. The ace pitcher of the baseball team that I once was is no more. Yet, I refuse to give up. Being tired and berated every day can't be all there is to my life. After all, Susan and I once vowed eternal love for each other, and isn't it pitiful for Cindy to grow up without proper guidance? As a father, it's my duty to wake them up and show them the right path. If I don't give up and produce results at work, maybe Susan and Cindy will have a change of heart. Until that day comes, I've resolved to keep working hard. Without being able to relax at home and still tired, I faced another morning. Ideally, home is where one relaxes and recovers from fatigue, but I found more relaxation at work these days. I've been with the same company since graduating from college. Now in my 10th year, I've been fortunate to have trustworthy colleagues and seniors I respect. While we're rivals, there's mutual respect among us. The sales department for communication devices had a strong athletic vibe, with everyone having been involved in some sport during their student days. For some reason, many of the male salesmen came from homes where the wives held significant sway. Despite each of us carrying our own burdens, it was a good workplace where we felt like comrades. There was a source of comfort there too. Her name was Ellie. "Good morning, Ellie," the sales support lady who handled the accounts I brought in said. With her glasses, she seemed like a calm and gentle woman at first glance. In her late 20s, she joined last year. Initially, I was concerned about her being new to employment due to some circumstances, but those concerns weren't unfounded. She never made a mistake in processing the accounts I brought in, and despite her gentle demeanor, she was quick in handling post-order procedures. Thanks to Ellie, I could always deliver smoothly to clients. Lately, she even started creating proposal materials I could use during client presentations in her spare time. Bringing brochures and estimates to clients is a given, but having proposal documents tailored to the client's needs based on the information gathered during meetings leaves a lasting impression. It's enough to outdo our competitors. Tom, great work. How did today's appointments for future acquisitions go? Ellie, you too. Today, I got an appointment with this client, I replied. It had become a routine for me to report to Ellie the details of the day's events and the appointments I secured with clients after work. Gradually, I found myself looking forward to these moments. When I returned to the office, Ellie greeted me with a smile. Today's client was Johnson Trading, a well-established company, right? How did it go? I started to report on my day. I had even spent time during work thinking about how to make my story interesting and amusing for her. I met with President Johnson. He's a stern old man who shouts no sales calls whenever work comes up, but he seems to have a soft spot for his grandchild. He spent the whole time talking about his grandchild and showed me a ton of photos on his computer. He has so many videos stored that his computer has become incredibly slow, so I suggested he stop storing them on his computer and start using the cloud for his photos and videos. He then agreed to an appointment for a future proposal. Ellie always had a great reaction to my stories. Wow, you've had a follow-up appointment from talking about his grandchild's photos. And you even proposed using the cloud to someone as old school and stubborn as President Johnson. That's amazing. I'll make sure to create a proposal document that's easy for the elderly to understand and that even a stubborn old man would appreciate. Normally, creating proposal documents would be a hassle, but having Ellie happily take on this task was soothing for me. It would be even better if it led to a successful deal. Achievements made alone are great, but accomplishments achieved as a team with the effort of two people hold many times more value. As far as I know, such teams bring more luck to the company. Despite everything, I might just be lucky. How dare you show your face here, you Baldy? Don't act like a father when you can't even earn, Baldy. No matter what insults await me at home, I will not give up. As long as I have a place at the company and a family I swore to protect, I must never give up. That day, what awaited me upon returning home was an even more intense barrage of insults from Susan and Cindy, and it was no wonder. Today marked the end of the fiscal year, and my branch had barely managed to stay in the black, with most of the team failing to meet their quotas. As a result, unfortunately, our bonuses were cut to a third. Thankfully, with Ellie's help, I had met my quota, but from the management's perspective, it was a collective responsibility. My efforts slyly went unrewarded. This year, I suffered the same fate as the rest of the team with a uniform bonus cut. I was certainly afraid of Susan and Cindy, who were furiously berating me. I'm not to blame. It was the others who performed poorly. Ugly words of shifting the blame onto my colleagues were about to escape my lips. I almost said it, but then it crossed my mind that such behavior is inexcusable. My teammates might be a bit foolish, but they are sincere people. Even if they are not performing well now, there might come a time when I could help them. I couldn't bring myself to blame them, even if they weren't there to hear it. You've been out all day, haven't you? You smell of sweat. Could you not come near the living room anymore? I don't have my own room. If I'm banned from the living room, where am I supposed to go? I heard something. My chair, newspapers, and even my cell phone charger were thrown into the hallway. It was Cindy who had thrown them from the living room into the hallway. A worthless, stinky old man with no warnings. Don't you ever pretend to be a father again. Susan didn't stop her. Instead, she peeked from the kitchen and said, if your only skill is earning money and you can't even do that, you're less than a person, less than an ADM. Unlike Cindy, who was venting her anger, Susan had a cold smile. That smile was twisted and ugly, reflecting the warped nature of Susan's inner self. Susan, she used to be so adorable, so cheerful and popular with everyone. Has 20 years changed her so much? I sat alone on a chair in the hallway, too exhausted to move. I was hungry, but of course there was no meal forthcoming. I clenched my teeth and held back the tears. Yet I have to work tomorrow. I have to go to the company. With the company in a tight spot, if I were unable to work, our branch would surely fall into the red. I had to somehow take a bath, cleanse myself, and get some sleep, or I wouldn't be able to work the next day. Meanwhile, in the living room, Susan and Cindy were laughing out loud while watching a comedy show. I remembered seeing them post a selfie on social media yesterday with a hashtag best friends parent child. Who would imagine that behind that best friends parent-child duo, there was a father being ousted to the hallway? Dragging my exhausted body, I managed to take a bath, then collapsed onto the chair in the hallway. Out of habit, I checked my phone. On the screen, Susan and Cindy sparkled like beautifully edited actresses. How did it come to this? Gradually, sleepiness overcame my fatigue, and so I ended up greeting the morning on that chair in the hallway. The next morning, I woke up feeling anything but refreshed and zoned out at my desk for a while. Then a kind voice reached me. Tom? It had been hours since I'd spoken to anyone, so my voice was barely there. Good morning, Tom. Ellie was waving her hand in front of me, trying to catch my attention. Huh, Ellie, right? Sorry, good morning. What's wrong? Did something happen? You don't seem yourself. Usually you are here 30 minutes before start time and dash out for visits right at the bell, but it's already 9:30. Saying so, her glasses glinted. In them, my anxious face was reflected as if they were mirrors. Her eyes seemed to probe into my soul with a sharp glint. Did something happen, Tom? I can't hide anything from you, can I, Ellie? I slumped back into my desk chair. I tried to laugh it off, but she didn't join in. Her expression was dead serious. Let's go for a drink. There was no escaping it. I'm sure. After work, we headed to a bar near the station. It was a charming, cozy place with a warm atmosphere centered around a counter. Ellie listened to me for a while, nodding, but when I told her about being berated by my wife and daughter and then sleeping in the hallway, she got angry on my behalf as if she were me. What? They said that to you, and you slept in the hallway on a chair in this cold? That's just not right. With a thud, Ellie put her drink down on the counter. Keep it down, Ellie. It's embarrassing, so please don't tell anyone. I said this as I sipped my drink and enjoyed the snacks. I was busy during lunch break, just nibbling on a convenience store snack in the sales car. I hadn't had a proper meal since yesterday, so the drink and snacks slowly seeped into my starving stomach. Moreover, having Ellie listen to me gradually loosened the tension in my heart. No, I'm sorry, but that's emotional abuse. It's a valid reason for divorce. Emotional abuse from a woman to a man, that can't be. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It's just the heartless attacking the kind-hearted. How did it come to this? She used to be so cheerful and vibrant. Did I do something to hurt Susan? I remembered how adorable Susan was when we first started dating, and I was about to tear up, so I quickly changed the subject. Old enough? You're too kind, Tom. Live your own life. Ellie slapped my arm with a sharp smack. Oh, hey, Ellie, that hurts. She put down her drink and looked at me with a serious expression. I'm sorry, but I just can't forgive it. After all, Tom, you work so hard every day for everyone. I want you to live your own life. This might sound sudden, and it's just a woman's intuition, but do you think your wife might be cheating on you? I was so taken aback by her sudden question that I choked on my drink. Hey, what are you suddenly suggesting? That's a bit much. My wife would never do something like that. Wasn't your wife a popular team assistant of the baseball team? Always well-liked? And she's still making an effort to maintain her beauty, just like in the past, right? Plus, she can't seem to help but show off on social media, and yet she disregards a serious husband like you. Not to mention her dependency on your daughter in shopping. It's endless. I'm sorry to say this about your wife, but from an outsider's perspective, she seems very lonely. Where do you think such a person would seek affection? Where do you think she'd satisfy her need for female validation? Ellie's gaze was intensely serious. I was at a loss for words. Well, that's... She pressed on. Does your wife go out late at night by herself? When she mentioned it, I did recall something. There were days when I came home to find no one there, assuming Susan and Cindy had gone out together. But at night, only Cindy would return alone. Alone, Susan would come back after I had fallen asleep, unnoticed by me. It might be presumptuous of me, but perhaps you should consider an investigation for infidelity. Maybe you're right. Acting on impulse, I immediately hired a detective agency near the office to investigate for infidelity. 2 weeks later, unfortunately, the investigation yielded results much more quickly and easily than expected. The results were conclusive. Guilty. Not only on the days I worked overtime, but even during weekdays, Susan was seen gallivanting with various men and heading to hotels. It seems she met these unknown men through a dating app. Susan was a woman who could only affirm her value by being desired by others. Her immature behavior suggested that her emotional development might have stopped in her 20s. This made her seem like a child woman. She might even be competing with her young and attractive daughter, Cindy. It might appear to be going well on the surface. Susan might be filled with jealousy, but it's hard to say for sure. I didn't want to know, I thought to myself. I failed to protect my family. I continued to go to work without taking any days off. I maintained a smile during work, but the moment I was alone in the sales car, I couldn't stop crying. Tears blurred my vision, making it dangerous to drive, so I discreetly parked in a convenience store lot and cried until there were no tears left. In the evening, when I returned to the office, Ellie greeted me with a smile again. There's no way she wouldn't notice my swollen eyelids and bloodshot eyes from my tears. However, she looked at me quietly and pretended not to notice. The next spring arrived. It was a sunny day with the cherry blossoms in full bloom. It was also the day of Cindy's high school graduation. As usual, Susan and Cindy ignored me. Dressed in an excessively flashy uniform, Cindy and Susan, in a pink suit, left for the graduation ceremony without me. I watched them go. I decided to graduate from this family. Goodbye, Cindy, Susan, my dear family. There's so much I want to say, but now it's okay. Thank you for everything up to now. I've decided to leave this family. You've been telling me to leave, so you probably won't stop me now. Take care. I'm going to live my own life. When was the last time we had a meal together as a family? Feeling a bit sentimental, I left several photos of Susan entering a hotel with a man on the living room table. Susan, having married right after graduating from university, had no work experience. There was no way she could support Cindy through college on her own, but they'd have to manage as a codependent mother-daughter duo. Later, I heard from an acquaintance at my former workplace that Cindy had dropped out of college and that she and Susan were living off part-time jobs. Their future must be uncertain and anxiety-inducing, but that was no longer my concern. Packing my few belongings into cardboard boxes to be shipped, I boarded a train bound for a new city. The sparsely populated train during a weekday afternoon was quite pleasant. I took a seat by a window with a beautiful view, opened a can of soda, and enjoyed a lunchbox. It was delicious. Cheers to me. The gods of fortune don't forsake those who work hard. Having achieved profitability on my own in a tough market, I was timely transferred to the headquarters in New York. The company even covered my moving expenses, and Ellie was coming along too. Our partnership remained strong at the New York headquarters. Freed from the shackles of Susan and Cindy, I was set to secure major contracts. After moving to New York, Ellie and I became good friends and developed a trusting relationship outside of work. While I took the lead at work with Ellie's support, in our private lives it was the opposite. Ellie led the way in everything from outings to living arrangements to dining, and I was always there to support her. Enjoying this dynamic, I hoped it would last forever and proposed to her. Next year, we're expecting a daughter. This time, I'm determined to create a family filled with smiles.
Indeed, among low-paying occupations, construction work is arguably one of the worst. Just go home. The last words were spat at me in a disdainful tone. I slowly got to my feet and bowed deeply since I was at a loss for how to break through the tense, freezing environment. "All right, I'll go home," I replied plainly before giving my friend Tom, who was planning the party, some cash. He shouted, "Wait." However, I grinned and walked out of the restaurant, into the now colder winter streets, without saying a word. As I headed home, I shivered. I was going somewhere the following day, looking dapper in a suit I hadn't worn in a while. I got to the main office of a big, well-known bank, a mega bank, to be exact. I used the highway to get here for a reason. I waited for half an hour after taking a number at the reception. When my number was finally called, the woman behind the counter gasped when she saw me coming. She questioned, "Why are you here?" "I'm 33 years old and go by Isaac. I married the woman I was seeing at the time, shortly after high school, and we had a daughter, Lily, at the age of 20. Like her mother, Aurelia, Lily, who turned 13 this year, has developed into a respectable young lady. She began middle school this year. In general, my work involves construction. I work in several different businesses, so it's challenging to focus on just one. However, there is no denying that it requires greater physical labor than office employment. I've never considered it to be difficult. I continue to do what I love because I enjoy it. I suppose I should tell you a little about my family. As I previously stated, I got married and had a child. But in actuality, Lily and I are the only ones living together. I'm a single father, to put it briefly. 3 years ago, Aurelia passed away from an illness. I will always remember that. Aurelia, whose name was associated with spring, was informed that she might have 6 more months to live. Cherry blossoms were Aurelia's favorite. We haven't missed a single cherry blossom viewing every year since we first started dating. The 3 of us, Lily, Aurelia, and I, were taking in the flowers in a well-known location that year as well. She abruptly mentioned how long her life would endure as everyone was enjoying Aurelia's prepared lunch as usual. Luckily, Lily didn't see our conversation because she was too occupied talking to some friends she ran into. "Are you sure it wasn't just a mistake?" I questioned Aurelia again after taking a deep breath. She nodded slowly. My breathing quickened as I felt as though I had been abruptly thrown into hell from the happy moment only a second before. I can very clearly recall my heart thumping so loudly that it was echoing in my ears. We'd agreed not to tell Lily just yet, so I went with Aurelia to the next doctor's appointment to find out more. The doctor said that only palliative treatment could be given because it was already too late. In the little time I have left, I want to make a lot of memories, Aurelia stated with a soft smile as I was overcome with hopelessness. Hearing those words, I almost wanted to blame her. Why would she say something so heartbreaking? Of course, I didn't actually say anything to her, but it felt as if she was preparing to leave us, and that thought alone made me sad. But rather than spending this limited time in despair, I wanted to make it a period Aurelia could look back on as meaningful. As this feeling grew stronger, we eventually told Lily, and the three of us spent time traveling and enjoying ourselves. Then, without reaching the season for our annual cherry blossom viewing, Aurelia passed away. Placing my hand on her peaceful face, as if she were just sleeping, I quietly let the words that welled up inside me slip out. I never thought you'd leave so soon. What am I supposed to do? Our daughter is still just a 10-year-old kid. Without you, I don't know if I can raise her on my own. The 6-month prognosis was so sudden that I couldn't wrap my head around it, constantly asking myself what I should do, but no answer ever came. Even after the funeral, the 49 days of mourning, and the burial, I couldn't move forward. During that time, Lily, though still grieving, calmly accepted the reality of losing her mother and stayed by my side. Dad, it's okay. Mom believed in you, so she became a star first. So Dad, let's keep living just the two of us. Lily, she must have been just as lonely and sad as I was, but seeing her try to stay strong made me realize that I had to get back on my feet. Aurelia wouldn't have wanted to see me like this. She didn't choose to get sick, and even though she never showed weakness in front of us, the nurse told me she had often cried during the painful treatments. Let's take it one step at a time. I may not be as good at cooking or housework as Mom was, but I'll do my best for both of us. I'll always be with you, Dad, so you never feel lonely. So 3 years have passed since we lost her, and Lily and I have been doing our best together. There were times when I felt like giving up or looked back with regret, especially when Aurelia's birthday or the anniversary of her death approached. But even during those tough times, I managed to get through, thanks to Lily's encouragement. These 3 years have been hard, but they were also important for deepening the bond between us. I never really believed that time could heal. But after 3 years, my body had gradually gotten used to living without her. Little by little, I found myself living as I had before Aurelia passed away. Around that time, I got invited to a group mixer. Technically, my friend Tom just asked me, "Let's go out for drinks. It's been a while." But when I showed up, it turned out to be a mixer. Since Lily was away for a 2-night, 3-day club training camp, I figured it wouldn't hurt to go out. I had no intention of meeting anyone new. My heart still belonged solely to Aurelia, but Tom, worried about me after seeing how down I'd been, thought that since 3 years had passed, it might be time for me to move on, and that's why he invited me. He was genuinely worried about me, a single dad raising a teenage daughter, and thought it might be good for me to meet someone who could become a mother figure. When he apologized, saying, "Sorry for being nosy," with eyes like an abandoned puppy, I just couldn't turn him down. So I decided to participate, not to find a new partner, but just to enjoy a good meal. And then the day of the mixer arrived. The venue was a high-end French restaurant, fancier than I had expected, and I couldn't help but feel that even the outfit I prepared for the occasion seemed lacking. We were told the women would be arriving soon, so we waited for a while. Eventually, a group of professionally dressed women, looking sharp and competent, walked in wearing dazzling dresses. Not bad quality. I'm not sure if any of them are a match for me, but this lineup isn't too bad, Rachel said as she popped down onto a chair without any hesitation. My friends, watching her behavior, had strange expressions on their faces. Just as I was wondering what was going on, my phone vibrated inside my bag. That's when I found out her name and realized she wasn't originally invited. Tom, the organizer, exchanged a quick glance with the woman who seemed to be organizing on the women's side. They both stepped out for a moment and then returned. My phone vibrated again, and I checked to see a message saying Rachel had just shown up uninvited. Tom sent a message saying that, and I got the sense that Rachel wasn't particularly welcome, that she was someone with some kind of issue. Unaware of the exchange going on behind the scenes, Rachel glanced at me with a sly smile. Then she bluntly declared, "There's one person here dressed pretty poorly. Is he just here to make up the numbers?" Even if that's the case, he could have at least worn something decent. Feeling mocked, I instinctively furrowed my brows, and she just shrugged her shoulders, giving me a disdainful look. When the mixer started, it began with the usual stuff. Introductions, talking about hobbies and special skills. Nothing too serious, but it was lively. What I quickly learned was that all the women were bank employees. They had all graduated from prestigious universities, ones whose names most people would recognize, and they all worked at the mega bank. The woman on the left, who was quite popular with the guys, had a gentle and easygoing aura. The one in the middle seemed a bit shy and didn't initiate conversations, but she answered politely when asked, which made her quite well liked. The problem was the woman on the right, Rachel. Bob, this is so boring. I guess guys really like those cutesy, soft-spoken girls. Huh. Personally, I think they're just putting on an act. Oh, and I'm not talking about you two. Okay. If I made you think that, I'm sorry. I just tend to say what I'm thinking, so people often misunderstand me. Even though no one had asked, she started talking and brought down the mood. She claimed not to be bad-mouthing the other two women, but it was clear that her words were filled with hostility toward them. Her blatant attitude and flimsy excuses were just exhausting to listen to. No wonder Tom, the organizer, had that strained expression when he saw Rachel. Surely, no one would want to engage with this kind of conversation. Seeing that no one responded, Rachel's cheerful expression from earlier turned stern, and she spoke in a tone as if scolding a subordinate. "What are you saying? I said something wrong. I just pointed out that guys who like manipulative, cutesy girls are questionable. Those types usually have nasty personalities anyway, so I was just trying to warn you. But now I'm the bad one." Oh, why are men always drawn to such obvious fakes? After that, Rachel stopped talking altogether. No one else dared to start a conversation with her. As time went on, she seemed to get bored. She started admiring her nails with a dreamy look, appearing completely uninterested in the mixer. 20 minutes later, Rachel, noticing something I was wearing, suddenly grinned and spoke up after a long silence. "Oh, Isaac, are you really participating in a mixer even though you're married?" Suddenly, all eyes were on me. More accurately, the women's eyes were glued to the ring shining on my left ring finger. It's a custom piece, one of a kind in the world. I had turned Aurelia's ring into a necklace, which Lily carries with her every day. The guys knew the situation, but the women didn't, and their gazes turned judgmental. That's when Tom hurriedly stepped in to explain. He told them that my wife had passed away, and that I was raising my daughter, Lily, on my own. The other women seemed to understand, and their eyes softened, mixing understanding with sympathy. But Rachel just muttered, "Oh," and turned away, as if completely uninterested now. She had drawn attention to me, scoffing as if to mock me, and now she was acting like she didn't care at all. If she bothered to ask, she should at least take responsibility and listen to the end. That sudden loss of interest in just a few words really irritated me. "Can't you be a bit more considerate with your words?" I asked. Rachel's eyes widened at my words. She probably never expected me to talk back. "What do you mean? I'm just the kind of person who always speaks her mind." "What? Are you telling me to live my life pretending and lying like those cutesy girls do, saying, 'Wow, amazing,' and still cool to everyone?" "That's not what I meant," I replied, finally reaching my limit. "Yes, I admit that wearing this ring could have caused some misunderstanding, and that's on me. But your attitude just now, don't you think it's a bit much? I'm not saying you should act like you're at work and be all polite, but it wouldn't hurt to at least practice some basic manners." Rachel's face turned bright red. It seemed she hadn't realized how condescending she had been, and being called out must have been quite embarrassing for her. "Are you seriously lecturing me? You, of all people. Just because you're lonely after your wife died, you think you can come to a mixer. You've got no right to judge me at that." Tom quickly intervened. He kept insisting it was his fault for dragging me there and pleaded not to blame me. He hadn't invited me to find a partner, but just to help me take a break. So if anyone was to be blamed, it should be him. But Rachel didn't listen at all. Seriously though, coming to a mixer with that attitude is just rude. Sure, maybe she had a point, but everyone has their own reasons for attending these things. Some people genuinely look for a match, while others just come along for good food and a bit of socializing. Besides, judging from the atmosphere, except for Rachel, the other two women, and my two friends seemed to be getting along quite well. So I couldn't help but feel like things were actually going fine. Rachel didn't seem like she was actually looking for a partner, and I wasn't either. In that sense, the mixer seemed to be working out just fine. But even so, Rachel continued to assert her own sense of righteousness. I only came because the original girl wasn't feeling well. I have no interest in guys who are beneath me, and I don't want them talking to me either. So stop trying to lecture me or call me down. It just disgusts me. Saying that, Rachel sank back into her chair, crossed her legs, and looked at me with a haughty expression. No one could say a word, and the atmosphere was getting unbearably tense. That's when the woman on the left tried to change the subject. Since it was already established that all the women were bank employees, the conversation shifted to talking about our jobs. Aside from me, the other guys were ordinary office workers, but they clearly had high social status and earned well compared to others their age. For women, marriage and pregnancy might mean temporarily putting their careers on hold. In such situations, having a partner with a stable income would provide peace of mind, allowing them to focus on childbirth and raising children. Perhaps because of that, the two women seemed to enjoy chatting with my friends. Since I wasn't interested in anyone other than my late wife, I just focused on enjoying the food and drinks while the four of them got along. After a while, my friends had pretty much exhausted the job-related topics, and the conversation hit a brief lull. Then, unexpectedly, the conversation shifted to me. When they asked what I did for work, I answered honestly. If I had to say, I guess I do construction work. The moment I said it, the mood in the room noticeably became heavier, especially Rachel, who had shown no interest in me earlier. Suddenly, she froze for some reason. She furrowed her brows deeply and glared at the food in front of her. I could pretty much guess why the atmosphere turned like this. After all, my friends next to me worked in major real estate and trading companies, so I knew I didn't quite measure up. Since the women looked uneasy, I decided to elaborate. Construction work isn't all I do. I have a middle school daughter, so I work somewhere that offers a bit of flexibility. It's just that most of my tasks happen to involve construction, so that's why I put it that way. There was a reason I deliberately used the phrase, if I had to say. My work spans many areas, and when I tried to pick just one to describe it, construction work happened to be the first that came to mind. Hearing my explanation, the women seemed to understand. There's definitely a bias some people have against manual labor jobs like construction. For example, large corporations and mega banks are highly selective, accessible only to a limited number of people. Often, academic background plays a major role in screening, leading to a biased view toward manual labor companies, which generally welcome anyone willing to work hard. I wondered if I should have kept quiet, but I figured being vague would only seem suspicious. Then the woman in the middle spoke up in a small voice. I think it's wonderful to do physical labor that helps others. She was probably doing her best to be encouraging. I didn't need the encouragement since I take pride in my job, but being told something supportive reminded me of how Aurelia used to cheer me on. It felt nice. The woman on the left also seemed to realize something and echoed a similar sentiment. After seeing their initial reactions, I knew their words were probably just polite remarks. Still, I was impressed by their ability to consider others' feelings. Just as expected from elite bankers. Meanwhile, Rachel just kept staring at me. I thought she was going to say something spiteful, but she remained silent. Feeling uneasy under her gaze, I couldn't help but ask, You have something to say." Rachel let out a deep sigh and then spoke. "People who can only do manual labor usually aren't very bright, right? They're only stuck in those jobs because they lack education, but they act so full of themselves. It's really irritating. If you want to lecture me, at least graduate from a prestigious university that everyone's heard of first." What was she trying to say? That question was answered almost immediately after finishing her harsh, prejudiced rant. Rachel let out a sigh, and then with the corners of her mouth curling into a spiteful grin, she said something outrageous. "I mean, construction work is practically one of the worst of the low-end jobs. There's no way someone like you would ever match up with us elite bankers. If you didn't come here to actually find a partner, you're just being a nuisance. Seriously, organizer, can you not invite people like him next time? It's such a buzzkill. Just go home." Her final words were thrown at me with a tone full of contempt. Objectively speaking, Rachel was undeniably attractive. Actually, all the women here were quite good-looking, and I honestly felt a bit out of place from the start. But hearing Rachel say it outright just didn't sit right with me. If I had said it as a self-deprecating joke, it would have been one thing, but coming from her, it was clearly a statement meant to look down on me. The silence that followed was even heavier than when I first mentioned working in construction. The other women, unsure of how to react, looked visibly uncomfortable. Rachel was already difficult to deal with as it was. Even the woman who organized the date on the women's side probably didn't expect Rachel to show up as a substitute. It was clear that Rachel was not well liked by those around her. Not knowing how to break the ice in the cold, tense atmosphere, I slowly stood up and bowed deeply. "All right, I'll head home," I said honestly, then handed some money to Tom, who was organizing the party. He called out, "Wait." But without saying anything, I smiled and left the restaurant, walking through the winter streets, which felt even colder now. I shivered as I made my way home. The next day, dressed sharply in a suit I hadn't worn in a long time, I was heading to a certain place. I glanced up at the branches of a nearby tree. It was still cold with no buds in sight, but in a few months, beautiful pink flowers would be blooming here. I really wanted to walk down this path with you again. Today is an important day, and I need to put in some extra effort. I'm a bit nervous, but I'll do my best. My phone's lock screen has always been a photo of Aurelia since we started dating. Taking pictures of her natural, genuine smile had almost become a hobby for me. Now that I couldn't do that anymore, it hurt. I unlocked my phone and opened the camera roll. For the longest time, it had been filled with photos of Aurelia, but after a certain point, things changed. After Lily was born, the gallery was filled with pictures of Aurelia and Lily. Whenever we traveled or enjoyed delicious food, I'd snap a few photos, but 90% of them were family pictures. Feeling encouraged by those memories, I gave a small nod and kept walking. I finally arrived at my destination, a well-known major bank, specifically the megabank's main branch. There was a reason I took the highway to get here. I took a number at the reception and waited for about 30 minutes. Since it was a Monday and the counters were crowded, I hadn't made a reservation, so I had to wait quite a bit. When my number was finally called, I approached the counter, and the woman there gasped as soon as she saw me. "Why are you here?" Rachel stared at me, completely dumbfounded, like a pigeon struck by a slingshot. Most of the customers at this megabank's main branch were either company owners, both large and small, or individuals with substantial assets. Of course, there were ordinary customers as well, but they typically used branch offices rather than the main one. Since I was using the corporate reception, Rachel seemed to instantly realize something. With a trembling voice, she spoke, "What brings you here today?" Her tone was clearly filled with a sense of fear, as if she were regretting her behavior from the previous night. Without paying any attention to Rachel's reaction, I calmly stated my business. "I'm here to close a company account." "Close the account." When she asked for more details, I gave her the company name, and the next moment, Rachel let out a shocked cry. "No way. You're the head of that company." "Yes, that's right, though I only took over about 6 months ago from the previous president, my late wife's father. So, it makes sense you wouldn't know. I usually leave the bank-related tasks to my staff, but I figured you might have at least heard that the president had changed." Rachel gave a small, hesitant nod. She was probably calculating in her head what kind of impact my company closing its account would have on the bank. The assets my company held in this mega bank amounted to roughly $400 million. When Rachel pulled up the account information on her computer, she seemed to grasp the situation, her eyes widening as if they were about to pop out. She was completely frozen at that moment. Another bank employee, who had been listening nearby, turned pale, stood up abruptly, and rushed to the back office. A short while later, the woman returned, this time with a man following behind her. He, too, looked completely pale. Isaac, I heard that our staff, Rachel, acted extremely disrespectfully toward you." The man speaking was Rachel's direct supervisor. Apparently, the bank's president, Mr. Martin, was out on business, making the supervisor the highest-ranking person present. The woman who had fetched the supervisor earlier probably didn't know what Rachel had done. However, when I mentioned closing the account worth nearly $400 million, and considering Rachel's panicked expression and the snippets of our conversation, she must have reported that Rachel had done something terrible. Rachel, visibly trembling, wore an expression of pure fear. Anyone would feel intimidated upon realizing they had been disrespectful to someone important enough to make their boss bow down. "We deeply apologize, Rachel." "Come on," urged her supervisor. Rachel hurriedly bowed her head. "I'm very sorry for being so rude yesterday." I didn't know whether her apology was sincere, but at least she didn't stubbornly cling to her pride and offered a proper apology, which was something. After pretending to think for a moment, I asked Rachel a question. "When I mentioned that I worked in construction, you seemed lost in thought, looking quite serious. After that, your attitude became even sharper. What was that all about?" Rachel was at a loss for words, stumbling over fragmented sounds like and But perhaps realizing that she needed to speak up to move past the situation, she began to speak slowly and deliberately. "The truth is, my father was also a single dad. He worked as a construction laborer." Rachel said that her mother had left because she couldn't stand her husband's low income. For some reason, Rachel was left behind, and from then on, it became a single-parent household. Apparently, even though her father's income wasn't so low that they couldn't make ends meet, his reckless spending habits and debt had been the real problem. With a sigh, Rachel continued to talk about her father's past. He was terrible with money and got buried in debt. My mom worked hard to support the family, but I guess she eventually hit her limit. One day, she just disappeared. From that point on, we had to survive solely on my dad's wages while paying off his debts. It was hell. They managed to secure food, clothing, and shelter, but Rachel couldn't have the kind of childhood where she got new clothes or went out with friends. To save off hunger, she would chew on sour seaweed snacks even after the flavor was gone. Growing up like that, she made up her mind to never become like her father. At the same time, she began to look down on people working in construction-related jobs. This was purely her own prejudice, but it was also rooted in Rachel's painful experiences from her past. So while I couldn't completely dismiss it, I still felt it was wrong for her to direct her resentment toward me, who had nothing to do with it. "You saw your father in me because I'm also a single dad raising a daughter, but you don't need to worry. It's true that I've been involved in construction and related work to prepare for taking over the company. However, I am now leading the company as its president. I earn a stable income and make sure to allocate enough budget for the employees' welfare." Hearing this, Rachel lowered her gaze and fell silent. After a few seconds of silence, she spoke up again, her voice filled with remorse. "You're right. I'm sorry. My father, whom I've cut ties with recently, contacted me asking for money. He said that since he'd let me attend a private high school, I should pay him back. But I only got into that school through recommendations and a scholarship. I guess I took out my frustration on you. I'm sorry. Rachel's supervisor, having listened to the whole story, declared that Rachel would face disciplinary action since I was an important client. Making me feel uncomfortable couldn't go unpunished. However, I shook my head. Punishing her won't solve the root of the problem. Besides, she explained her situation and sincerely apologized. I believe that last apology came from her heart. Rachel, what do you really want to do? Rachel fell silent, deep in thought, before softly whispering, I want to change, not just myself, but my father too. I think he's still struggling even now. Despite everything, he was a kind man. His dependence on alcohol has made things worse, but cutting ties with him without helping might have been part of the problem. Seeing Rachel speak with a determined look in her eyes, I nodded. Then with that commitment, let's put yesterday's incident and today's account closure behind us. Do your best, Rachel. Rachel nodded in agreement, and her supervisor and the other bank staff breathed a collective sigh of relief. After that, I returned to my usual routine. Lily came home from her training camp exhausted, immediately raiding the fridge for ice cream. Yay, my favorite ice cream. She happily munched on a chocolate-covered ice cream bar, her face beaming with satisfaction. Seeing her like that reminded me so much of Aurelia. Aurelia had also loved chocolate, always choosing it for dessert wherever we went. Looking at Lily, it was like a mirror image of Aurelia. I knew I couldn't consider a remarriage. I made up my mind not to attend any more mixers and to continue spending peaceful days with just Lily. But there was one thing that kept lingering in my mind. It was about Rachel and her father. Since that day, I hadn't been back to the bank, so I had no idea what had happened to them. Being a single dad raising a daughter, I could understand some of the struggles and hardships her father might have faced. I could understand, to some extent, the part about turning to alcohol as an escape. However, I decided that as an outsider, it wasn't my place to meddle in Rachel and her father's issues, so I chose not to ask any further. A few months passed, and it was late March. The cherry blossom blooming announcement had already been made, and the trees were in full bloom. Many people were walking around, gazing up at the flowers. They're so beautiful this year too, Dad. I can't wait to eat that lunch. Hold on now, let's not rush. Let's enjoy the view of the cherry blossom path a bit more first. As usual, Lily and I had come to see the cherry blossoms together. As we walked through the bustling tourist spot, something caught my eye, someone who stood out to me. It wasn't that they were particularly noticeable to others, but to me they were. I saw Rachel walking with an elderly man with gray hair, who was sitting in a wheelchair. Though I couldn't hear their conversation, the atmosphere around them was calm, and Rachel's expression seemed softer and more relaxed. I'm sure good things will happen for you too. Gently brushing a cherry blossom petal off Lily's head, I murmured to their retreating backs. Despite my full confusion, she smiled and gave me an eager grin, saying, Wow, fantastic. Who are you, James? I was dumbfounded and said, Huh, when she tugged my hand and showed me a certain screen. James is my name. I'm 30 years old. Since I was a little child, I have liked reading, and after I graduated from college, I was hired by a chain bookstore. My professional life started when I was assigned to a bookstore in downtown New York. Being surrounded by books was a lot of joy, and I felt like I had discovered my vocation when I talked to clients about books. After 5 years of employment, I was promoted to head office after my sales performance was acknowledged. It was a promotion. I've worked at the headquarters for 3 years, and today I'm working with sales data as usual. Mike, my boss, once requested me to get the documents ready for a crucial meeting. He asked me to take a specific regional store's sales data and graph it. Clearly, the data came from a store that wasn't doing well. "This is Mike." As Mike passed by, I yelled out to him and inquired about it. Mike, a mildly attractive man in his early 40s, remarked, "Oh, we're debating whether to close that store," while clumsily scratching the back of his head. He looked at my laptop and said, "The data doesn't look good." On a previous trip, I had already traveled to this location and visited the store. It stood in a corner of a dilapidated retail area. I was graciously assisted by a lovely woman my age when I inquired about a book. Despite her lack of friendliness, she was well versed in lesser-known writers. "I've been there. It has many books and is a little larger." I whispered, "It would be sad if it vanished." Mike gave a nod. "The demise of physical stores is disheartening. Extract the info for me, please." As he went back to his desk, he patted my shoulder and scratched his head, saying, "Thanks." He has a propensity of scratching his head when he's angry. It's likely that he also doesn't want to discuss closing the store. There is a noticeable drop in reading, and retailers all over the world are having trouble keeping up with the popularity of ebooks and the ease of online shopping. With a groan, I started working on the data extraction. Mike called me a few days later. "Is it hard to say something?" As I saw him using both hands to scratch his head, I thought, "James, can you transfer to that store that's up for closure?" he asked, looking at me as though he was making up his mind. It came out of nowhere. He continued to stroke his head, and I was so stunned that I was unable to speak. "I apologize. It would be unfortunate to lose it because it is the only store in that area. I merely thought of you when the head office proposed sending someone. You mentioned that you would be upset if the store closed, correct?" In a regretful tone, he explained, "So, I ended up suggesting you. You can, of course, refuse at this point. I'm capable of managing it. However, your sales record is what took you to the main office, correct? Perhaps you might do better on the sales floor," I thought. As I listened to his words, I was astounded. "But, I'm sorry. I know you just got a head office position. I'll try to keep your benefits the same." He apologized so intensely that I snapped out of it. "No, Mike, please stop. I'll go. I'll go," I said. When I said this, he looked bewildered. "But it's kind of like a demotion, you know," he said. Demotion or not, it didn't matter. Leaving New York would be a bit sad, but this was a dream come true for me. "Mike, please proceed with this. Thank you. I love working in sales," I said with a big smile. He looked confused, but I wasn't lying. Mike had no reason to feel guilty. I aimed to work in a bookstore because I wanted to be surrounded by books. Being a bookstore clerk is my calling. Working at the head office taught me a lot, but I still wanted to be on the floor, handling books. While he looked puzzled, I joyfully expressed my gratitude for the chance to return to being a clerk. A few months later, after receiving the transfer order and getting a period for preparation, I finally stood in front of the regional branch, ready to work as a bookstore clerk again. It's still in the same run-down shopping district with little foot traffic. As I pondered how to revitalize the store, I noticed a piece of paper on the ground. Picking it up, I saw it was a promotional flyer from the store. It explained the key points of a book they wanted to draw interest to. The flyer was for a romance novel I had read, with cute handwriting saying, "It'll move everyone, young and old," and packed with reviews. Yes, that part moved me too," I nodded, reading along with the flyer. I heard a voice from behind, "May I help you?" Turning around, I saw a woman with thick glasses glaring at me. "The store opens at 10, but do you need something?" Looking closely, wasn't she the clerk who helped me when I traveled here? I think she wore glasses back then, too. "Are you a clerk here?" I asked. She nodded. "I'm starting here today. My name is James," I said, raising my voice a bit. She flinched a little. "Ah, Are you the one transferring from the head office? Saying this, she apologized. My deepest apologies. I'm Emily, the manager here. Nice to meet you. Her polite greeting left me confused. She's the manager, and I'm just an employee. Why is she being so formal? As I pondered, she spoke hesitantly. We haven't met the targets set by the head office. I'm truly sorry you've come all the way here because of that. Hearing this, I panicked. No, I came from the head office, but it's just a regular transfer. I'm not here in any senior position. She must have been under a lot of pressure from not meeting the head office targets. Amidst this, she was frightened by the arrival of someone transferred from the head office. She thought she'd be directly supervised, managed, and reprimanded. When I told her it was a complete misunderstanding, her eyes behind the glasses welled up with what seemed like relief. However, the head office had sent me here with the goal of boosting the store's sales. Let's work on this together, I smiled at her. But she responded with a cold, yes, looking forward to working with you, and went inside. Our initial interaction suggested a challenging road ahead for communication. A few days later, while working at the store, I observed many things. The first thing I noticed was the lack of energy. Emily, the manager, seemed constantly stressed from the head office pressure. As a result, she always seemed on edge. Consequently, the part-time staff also lacked enthusiasm. They tried to avoid Emily as much as possible and interacted with customers in a rather detached manner, likely out of fear of making mistakes. Moreover, there were very few customers. Given the lack of people in the shopping district, this was understandable. But it was my job to find a solution. I racked my brain. For now, I decided to tweak the promotional pop a bit. The PO I found on my first day had excellent content about the novel with wonderful, relatable comments. However, only if you read it all. The small text was densely packed. While you could feel the creator's love for the book, reading all of it without prior interest would be tough. But I liked this POV. I felt not only the love, but also the kindness of the person who made it. The card, softly painted in pink and carefully written, was charming. I slipped the PLP into my pocket and started creating a more straightforward version. While setting up the new PLP, I continued observing the store. Customers would read a bit and then leave, or they would glance around and say, "I'll just look it up online," before walking out. There had to be a way to turn this around. I carefully observed customer behavior. One day, an older woman was browsing the children's book section, picking up and putting back various books. When I approached her, she was initially wary, but eventually told me she was looking for something that might interest her grandson, who didn't like reading. My eyes lit up. I love children's books too. They're easy to read, and I often read them lightly before bed when I'm tired from work. It helps me sleep well. After asking about her grandson's interests, I recommended 2 books. She bought both and left with a smile, saying she'd bring her grandson next time. This could be a breakthrough. Excited by the customer's smile, I eagerly suggested to Emily, "I think there are many people who want their kids or grandkids to read more. Can we enhance the children's book section a bit?" She paused, thinking. Her lack of visible emotions often made her seem stern when she was silent. However, in the past few days, I realized that she wasn't angry, but was simply reflecting on what was said. After a moment, she looked up. "Yeah, I think that's a good idea. How about placing it near the entrance?" Elated by her approval, I set up the section. With the help of a part-timer, we managed to create a cute section. I went to report it to Emily, only to hear her distressed voice saying, "No way, please wait. That's impossible on such short notice." It seemed she was on the phone with someone. I waited for the call to end, then cautiously opened the office door to find her eyes brimming with tears. I rushed in, fully opening the door. "What's wrong?" She quickly turned away, not wanting me to see her tears. "It's none of your business. Get back to work. She dismissed me. But I persisted. Was it from the head office? Did they say something? A target? It must have been a direct hit. Her shoulders shook as she explained. They've set an annual sales target. It's 3 times our current sales. If we don't achieve it within a year, they'll close us down. They want monthly progress reports, and if we're not performing well, they might close us before the year is up, she told me in a trembling voice. I had only been assigned here for less than a month. What was happening at the head office? However, even if I confronted Mike at the head office, their decision wouldn't change. So, show me the target. I saw there was no genre specified. In bookstores, it's common to have targets for specific genres, like increasing magazine sales. Here, if magazines had been specified, it would have been challenging. So I felt a bit relieved. Thinking it over, I muttered, we might have a chance, making Emily turn around with a glimmer of hope. Really? Her eyes behind the glasses were wet. I patted my chest. Yes, let's do this. Let's prove them wrong. When I said this, I thought I saw the corners of her mouth lift slightly. I love bookstores. Being surrounded by books filled with so many emotions. I don't want to lose the store. I don't want to lose it. I felt the same way. I heard that she was also 30 years old. Such a huge responsibility on the shoulders of a young woman. I wanted to lighten that burden, even if just a little. A fire was lit in my heart. I went to the newly created children's book corner at the storefront and started calling out to passersby. I can recommend books that will make your kids love reading. Please lend me your ear. With that introduction, I began explaining the books for early elementary school students from the corner I had just set up. It was early afternoon. Some women returning from lunch and elderly people coming back from shopping started to gather. As I was explaining, some customers asked the part-timer, "Where's that book he mentioned?" This set off a chain reaction, with many people picking up various books. When I couldn't keep up with the demand, I called for help, and Emily came out. She was surprised to see the crowd of customers, but quickly started answering their questions politely. While I was explaining to other customers, I could naturally hear her explanation. Her pleasant voice discussing the children's detective series was precise and captivating. It was clear that she had thoroughly researched children's books as well. In just a few hours, we sold a considerable number of children's books, achieving the highest sales in recent times. It became clear that this demographic was responsive to children's book promotions. Next, the plan was to organize a reading event and then a book report contest. While talking to customers earlier, I learned that this area assigns book report homework during winter break. I shared this with Emily, discussing the strategy after a customer bought a fantasy children's book and mentioned it would be perfect for a book report. "Can we distribute flyers to schools?" I asked. I was thinking we could have a book report fair with books categorized by genre and grade level, not just the recommended books, but other interesting ones as well. When I suggested this, she added, "How about including advice on how to write the reports? We could create chart-style guides to help them." We then discussed which books would be best. Since we both love books, the conversation was lively. Emily looked so cute when she talked excitedly. I had a sudden thought. You would look cute without glasses. She suddenly stiffened. "What did you just say?" It's inappropriate to make such comments to a woman. Realizing I had spoken my thoughts aloud, I was shocked. Apparently, what I had been thinking slipped out of my mouth. I hastily tried to make excuses, but she just went back to work. Oh, things were going so well. Regretting my slip of the tongue, I finished the rest of my work. 2 days later, during Emily's time off, I enhanced the reading corner. I created a space where parents and children could freely enjoy reading together. Starting today, I plan to propose having scheduled reading times where staff would read to children. I went to find Emily to suggest this and was surprised when I saw her. She wasn't wearing her glasses and was blushing. "It's not because of what you said, James. I didn't switch to contacts because of you. It just so happened. Really, just a coincidence. I got a coupon. Her awkward explanation was too cute. I was surprised at how large her eyes actually were. The thick lenses of her glasses had made them look smaller. Cute. The words slipped out, making her turn bright red. Can't you control what comes out of your mouth? She asked. I don't usually blurt out my thoughts like this, I struggled to explain. A part-timer arrived and started fussing over Emily's missing glasses, providing me with an escape. She was blushing and protesting, but I could see glimpses of a smile. The part-timer, surprised by her smile, continued the conversation. Once again, I accidentally spoke my mind. You should smile more. It creates a more approachable atmosphere. The part-timer's face turned pale, and I realized I had messed up again. But this time, Emily didn't get angry. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I unapproachable? Both the part-timer and I were taken aback. Although our conversation ended as the workday began, seeing Emily practicing smiling in front of the mirror filled my heart with a warm feeling, something I kept to myself. 2 weeks later, with winter break approaching, we decided to host the fair. It lasted 3 days. Our project, the book report consultation fair, spearheaded by Emily and me, kicked off. Thanks to the flyers we distributed to nearby schools and the social media announcements, many people gathered. People crowded around the board I had made. It started with, "Do you like books?" and led to yes or no answers, ultimately recommending genres based on the responses. From there, they were guided to sections categorized by grade and genre. Emily stayed at the book report writing advice corner, gently teaching the kids. In recent days, she had been practicing how to appear more approachable, not just with her smile, but also her tone of voice. Her efforts paid off as a group of curious children gathered around her. An elderly woman with her grandchild in tow mentioned she wanted to read, but her eyes got tired. I recommended audiobooks, where a narrator reads the book aloud. While this doesn't contribute to the store's sales, I strongly encouraged her. Please download from this site. It's our head office's site, I said, handing her a flyer. Hopefully, it would help the head office's sales. The 3-day fair, utilizing a long weekend, ended in great success. Inspired by customer conversations, I had several ideas for future fairs, but needed a break for now. It had been incredibly busy. Taking a breather, I went to the back and found Emily staring at her computer. How was it these past 3 days? It was exhausting, wasn't it? I asked casually. She suddenly approached and started shaking my hand vigorously. Completely confused, I saw her looking at me excitedly with a smile. Amazing. Amazing, James. Who are you? With a dumbfounded huh, I was pulled by the hand and led to her computer. Look at this. Sales. It was the sales figures for the 3 days of the fair. We had easily surpassed the monthly sales target set by the head office. I was astonished. There are so many parents and children struggling with book reports, I remarked. Emily enthusiastically patted my back. No, look at these numbers. Just 3 days. It's unbelievable, James. You're amazing. Despite her excitement, I couldn't fully grasp it. This success was a team effort, and we just happened to hit the mark with the book report theme. Although I had several ideas for future fairs, we needed to ensure people regularly visited the store to achieve our yearly goal. I hadn't figured that out yet. When I mentioned this, she sighed and sat down. You're so calm. I felt it too when customers said, "We'll come back." It wasn't just polite talk. They genuinely meant it, she said. Emily, having interacted with many customers, could sense these things. Her intuition might be trustworthy. You're amazing. I would never have thought of the fair on my own. I was hesitant about the reading corner, wondering who would do the reading, but people were satisfied with my amateurish reading, she admitted. I couldn't help but protest. You're not an amateur. She laughed. She had smiled more in the past few days than I ever thought possible. I'm an amateur. I love books, but hated reading textbooks aloud in school. No, you're a book lover and an expert, I replied. She looked surprised. I actually visited this bookstore once on a trip and asked about a somewhat obscure author. You explained it in detail. I thought you knew everything. I wasn't sure if it was her, but Emily confirmed it was. Tom Johnson. I jumped in surprise. Wait, you remember that? I had indeed asked about that author. It's rare to find his books in bookstores, so I was surprised to see them there. I love that author too. I said, that's why I was so happy to be asked about him. It's amazing that we share the same favorite author. I took out the pop I had kept in my pocket. It was the one I found on my first day at this store. Seeing her expression, I was certain. You wrote this pop, didn't you, Emily? She nodded shyly. I know it's hard to read, but once I start writing, I can't stop. It's ironic that someone who teaches how to write book reports writes such messy texts. Seeing her dejected expression, I couldn't help but smile. I love it. It's full of affection for the book. I thought whoever wrote it must be a kind person. When I said this with a smile, she turned away. Sorry, it's not written by a kind person, she replied. Her comment made me laugh. What's so funny? She asked. You're kind and cute, just as I imagined from the pop. Her face turned red, and she looked down, flustered. Seeing her like this, my feelings naturally poured out. I want to marry someone who loves books like you, Emily. Would you consider dating me with marriage in mind? The words came out naturally and honestly. Her eyes widened in surprise. On the first day, she had been a stern-looking woman with thick glasses, a stern face, and her semi-long hair tied back tightly, making her seem unapproachable. The Emily standing in front of me now had removed her glasses. Her expressions were varied, and her smile was adorable. She was flustered. I'm just a woman who spends her days off reading books, she said. That's great. I want to read with you, I replied. Her face turned bright red. I'm not cute, and I'm plain. No, you're incredibly cute, I said. Her face grew even redder. And I'm not straightforward, she added. I couldn't help but laugh. What are you talking about? You're incredibly straightforward. When I suggested contacts, you came back from your day off wearing them. That's because it was the first time a man said something like that to me, she said, covering her face with both hands. When you said I could be cute, I wanted to live up to that expectation. I couldn't hold back any longer and hugged her in my arms. She whispered, Will you continue to support me? Of course. I feel like we can do anything together. I imagined our future, wanting to read lots of books to our children if I married her. I dreamed of building a small house with a room filled with books. In a sunny room, on a comfortable carpet, Emily and I, along with our children. How many would there be? We'll all read lots of books together. Of course, it would be okay if the kids didn't like books. Just listening to us reading to them would be enough. If we did that, they'd surely grow to love books. Dreaming of such a future, I hugged Emily even tighter.